We know what you've come for, and now we're going to give it to you. You're listening to the No Such Thing podcast.
Hey, we are the marching men riding down the road again. Hey, we are the marching men, we're riding off to war. Gonna saddle her and free and raise the flag of liberty, showing the world how to be. We're marching off to war.
Hello everybody, it's Cornell Hanratty from the Talk Gang podcast, and I'm changing things up a bit here because I've got a new type of guest this week, and he is WJ Sheehan. Now, WJ Sheehan, who is a resident of New York, I think Long Island to be exact, has been on many podcasts and coast to coast, and his claim to fame is he is a Bigfoot writer, and he has about 6 volumes at the minute. I think he's working on number 7, but I heard him on a few different podcasts, and I was like stunned at how personable he was, and he's quite a character, and he's a lot of fun. So I thought, well, hell, I'm going to go on this website and see if I can't get him on my website, and he get back to me within an hour, and I'm like, holy shit, that's pretty good. So if you have a chance to check out his books, his book series is entitled Bigfoot Terror in the Woods. Now, not to plagiarize anybody, and I know many people have said this, and I have said it in the past, but when I first came to America from Ireland, I came down the East Coast from the East Coast of Canada, and what struck me was the amount of wilderness and uninhabited areas there were. This was during the daytime. Now, I've since taken a couple of trips across the continental US in a plane from east to west coast, and I am astounded by the amount of wilderness that there is that no one lives in. Now, I'll give you a couple of facts. Like I think it's 34% of the US is forested. So that equates to like almost 1.2 million square miles. So that's a lot of places that something that we haven't discovered yet can hide out in, especially if it's pretty smart, especially if, where my theory is concerned, it may be a Gigantopithecus, which I have a really hard problem saying. But this thing, which was found in China, and there was a fossil found in China, if this thing came across the Bering Land Strait, like during the Ice Age, and it does seem to be found mainly in the Northwest, and in BC, and in Alaska, and there are remnants found in other parts of the country, even Massachusetts, and Maine, which I believe someone told me is 95% forest. So just wrap your head around that. Maine is the size of Ireland. So I think of all of the conspiracy theories that, not conspiracy theories, and I keep saying conspiracy theories, but I think where the government's concerned, it is a conspiracy theory, because I think they know damn well what Bigfoot is. And I think out of all of the paranormal conspiracy theory community, I think Bigfoot, Sasquatch is the most plausible. Now, as Les Stroud said, aka Survivor Man, he was like, some tribes in Canada include Sasquatch on their totem poles. He represents loyalty or honesty or something like that. And he's up there with the eagle, the the bear, and other such creatures that we already know exist. Now, Sasquatch is also up there. So, if he is not that ancient primate, that is the only primate that has went extinct that I mentioned, Gigantopithecus, some people have different theories that he is extraterrestrial. He's from a different dimension. He is a Neanderthal that went into hiding. He is a tribal person of Native American descent. I don't know, but I think that my feeling is that he is a Gigantopithecus that lives in the forests, deep in the interiors of the American wilderness. And we also get reports from Russia, which Russia is the most forested landmass in the country, in the world. We get a lot of reports from there, but it ain't that hard to hide. I've been, even where I live, I mean the immediate area where I live, the 10 square miles that I live in, we have a great big reservoir, and there is a lot of woods surrounding it, and there are trails, but I mean, if you go off those trails, I mean, you're going to get like bitten to shit by mosquitoes and ticks, and it's not pleasant. So no one has any business going off those trails, and most people don't. Maybe forestry workers do or something to mark trees for to be cut down after being like decimated by the Asian beetle or something. I don't know, but man, there's so much wilderness out there, and the mind boggles. You go over this country and you will spend hours in a plane going over places that are uninhabited and are just trees. So, and people always ask me, well, scientists would have discovered this by now. Well, scientists aren't really looking. There is no active program. There are a few outliers that have put their reputations up at stake that do kind of research this thing, but they don't have the manpower. There's a handful. There isn't some like big government backed research effort to find out if there's a, not that we know of, that there is some kind of creature or creatures, because people estimate them in the thousands. And I mean, Teddy Roosevelt believed in it. I think his friend actually was killed by it, and there's a national forest up in, I think it's Washington, that is named after him. And I can't remember what the name of the forest is, but there are reports going back to the 1800s of this wild, hairy man, bipedal creature that is 8 feet tall, that the Indians already know about. So, my next guest is gonna be, well, he's allowed me to call him Bill instead of WJ Sheehan. He's very personable. I'm like, can I call you Bill? He's like, sure. That's what he calls me. So, I'm really looking forward to meeting Bill. He, like I say, he lives on Long Island. He's a bit of a firecracker, and he's a great storyteller. And I think I want to ask him about how he got interested in this whole thing. And he's going to read a couple of excerpts from one of his 6 volumes. I think he's working on his 7th. And I'm not a great reader, so I'm relying on all his YouTube and podcast interviews to find out what he's all about, because he doesn't have audiobooks set up yet. And for me, that's kind of tough, because when I start reading, I go to sleep. After the kids, I put the kids to bed, and then that's it, lights out. So I need audiobooks, or else I don't read books anymore. And I listen to audiobooks on my long car rides to work and back. So, also, I would like to thank my upcoming musical contributions from Northern Ireland. One of them being Sparrow Force, another being Sid Hellfire, another hopefully being Buck Egypt, because I scour the internet looking for suitable music for some of my my podcasts, and I'm like, well, you know what? Why don't I just ask my friends back home? Do they want to contribute? I'll credit them fully, and I think that they're diverse enough. They play a lot of different music that each like I will switch it up, and each song will represent a different theme of the podcast. So that's really exciting, and I hope I think it's a good idea. Keep it in the family, kind of thing. So I mean, I can go onto these websites and go through their licensing information and requirements and stuff, but it just adds more work to the whole process, which I do not have a lot of time for. Unless I break my leg or something, this thing's still going to be held together with spit like the Millennium Falcon. But WJ Sheehan is going to be a hell of a ride, and if I get into it with him, and if he's enough time, and he speaks to me for hours like it seems to be that he can, because he's got a lot to say, I will make a two-parter. And he Bigfoot has been a current theme in a lot of my podcasts, because I'll tell you why. I think I've told you before, but when I first started this podcast, my first interview was with a ghost hunter. My second was with a Bigfoot experiencer. And I was struck by how normal she was. I'm not saying that paranormal researchers or paranormal experiencers are any different, but there are a lot of people out there that mistake things for things. But when you see a Bigfoot, you know it's a Bigfoot. And the reason why these people are seeing things and stuff is because they're outdoorsy people, so they tend to be hunters and fishermen and law enforcement officials and forestry workers. So they're not sitting on their couch and scouring the internet. And I'm not putting paranormal researchers down. There's a lot to go out into the field, like the guy I interviewed, Mr. Stephen Flaherty. He's the real deal, but there's a lot of them that just there's a lot of wishful thinking around, and they know they can't be harmed because, well, I've never heard of any paranormal researcher being killed. I've heard of plenty of people that have come into contact with being killed, and that's a God's honest truth. Just Google missing 411, and there's a lot of people go missing every year in America's national parks, and I think it's mostly Bigfoot. It has to be. It can't be any. If it's not Bigfoot, it's something supernatural. So I'm going to be Mr. Practical and say that it's Bigfoot, because he's lived in the woods for a millennia, and he knows the terrain. He's stealthy, he's quick, and he's agile, and he's fast. And that's the only thing I can think of. So, without any further ado, I bring you Mr. WJ Sheehan. Thanks for listening. See you on the other side.
Hey, Cornell.
Mr. William J. Sheehan, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Now, I just want to introduce you real quick. Now, I've already pre-recorded an intro for you, which explains everything, but I'll just go over it again. You are Mr. William J. Sheehan of the oh my God, I'm having a brain fart. Of Bigfoot Terror in the Woods fame, and you have 6 volumes, and you're working on your 7th.
Right, now it's Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters.
Yes, I keep forgetting to include that part.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is there's some other fellow out there that wrote one book called Bigfoot Terror in the Woods.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, but mine, of course, is Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters, and of course my name is not his name.
Okay, so I'm going to call you Bill for the interview because you already gave me permission to do that.
Sure, that's no problem.
So, hey, listen, it's a real honor to have you on the show, and everybody's very excited on the other side of the pond, and they're all, oh my God, you got this writer, and they've been listening to your work, and people are texting me on my cell phone here, so I'm going to just have to turn it right off. Now, you also have a podcast too of the same name.
Yeah, our new podcast is Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters, and it's available on, all of the platforms that people are used to using. We've had that going now for a little over a month, and the amount of support coming our way is just tremendous. We appreciate all of that. It's my brother and I doing it, and we're having a lot of fun with it, and kicking around a lot of things Bigfoot at the same time. I think it's very informative and very entertaining. So we're really happy about the results and the reception we're getting from the listeners.
I think it's a very good podcast. I've listened to every episode, and you guys actually remind me of Car Talk on NPR. You're the Car Talk of Bigfoot. Because you're always like bouncing off and laughing, but you're talking about something that people think is ridiculous, and that's what I want to get to next. Wes said on his own show, Sasquatch Chronicles, which is where I heard you, and which is why I wanted you on the show, because you seem like such a good guest, and he actually had to have you on twice because his listeners demanded it.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. Wes was actually my first interview.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and while I was in the midst of writing, now mind you, Cornell, I'm an older guy. I still carry a flip phone. And to be honest with you, if I didn't think I needed that, I wouldn't even carry that. I mean, that's where my mind is at,
right,
with electronics. And one thing led to another, and I started delving into putting the information together and writing these books. And, I just kind of found my own little niche doing these. And, I really enjoy it. And I am, of course, an enthusiast about the Bigfoot creature. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any involvement with it at all. And when I had completed a number of volumes, during that time, I use an iPod at work. I am a technician in a major hospital, and I monitor heart and lung function for a number of units within the facility. And one day I was watching a clerk, and I looked over her shoulder, and she was watching a Boston Red Sox baseball game on this little device. And I said to her, "What are you doing?" And she explained it to me, and I said, "How are you doing that?" And she explained the rest, and I actually went out after she told me what she was doing, and I bought an iPod. So now I had this iPod, and I started, over a period of time investigating what I could do with it and downloading apps and all of this stuff, which I had no experience with. And I stumbled across Sasquatch Chronicles with Wes on one of these applications, and I was like, "Oh, looky here! What do we have here? Something right in my wheelhouse." Right. And I started listening to him, and I said, "Wow, this is fantastic!" And one thing led to another. So at some point in time, I went on his website, and I sent him a message, told him who I was, and the rest is history, as they say.
Well, I'd like to say this. On Sasquatch Chronicles alone, I think there are like probably 1,000 people that have witnessed something. And if anybody comes at me with, when I mention Bigfoot in work, people usually scoff and laugh and, think I'm an idiot. But, I mean, these 1,000 people I mean, a lot of them are like, there's Navy SEALs on there, there's cops on there, there's forestry workers on there, and they're telling you this story about this creature being like 10 foot away from them, and then the cops tell them, it was a bear. It was a bear. You saw it.
Yeah, well, you know, Cornell, obviously, when we talk about foolishness, you couldn't get any more foolish, in my mind, than telling somebody they don't know the difference between a bear and a Bigfoot.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there is... you'd have to be on prescription drugs nearing the overdose phase to not know what you are looking at when you see a Bigfoot.
Well, yeah, or you would have to be on like a heavy dose of mushrooms or something to mistake that. Definitely, because, I mean, like when I hear these people describe a Bigfoot, and when you listen to Wes's show, and you hear these people talking, their voices are shaking. Sometimes they're almost hysterical. There was one guy on there, I think he was in Texas, and he was the guy that brought the veteran food. And one day he went there, and there was a Bigfoot, and the veteran was throwing all the food to the Bigfoot, and he never saw the veteran again. It was on Thanksgiving Day, and that guy was crying and hysterical. And a lot of these guys, you can hear it in their voice. It's like, what's more probable, that these guys are lying, or that there's something that we don't know? You know? Yeah.
Well, think about this, Cornell. I don't know anything about you, right? And you really don't know anything about me.
Right.
But where you live, what would it take to make you sell your house against your will?
What would it take to sell my house against my will?
In other words, you're happy being there. You have no reason to leave. Your employment is there. You have time and energy invested in the property. You like the house.
Yeah.
Your family is in school there. So what type of scenario would it take to make you just up and move suddenly, as though you had no recourse but to do that?
Al-Qaeda visiting me and telling me that I had to leave or they were going to kill my family. Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Or a boatload of Vikings attacking your neighborhood.
Right.
But here we have people, I have accounts in my books of individuals who, given the very same circumstances, liked where they were living, bought the house for a very particular reason, and suddenly they find that they're going to move after their encounter with this creature because they're a little bit more than uncomfortable knowing this sucker is walking around in the woods where they live. So my point is, people don't just up and move saying it was because of a Bigfoot if it was because of an employment transfer, or perhaps they wanted to get away from the winter and move to a sunnier part of the country. But they're saying they moved because of the events that happened surrounding a Bigfoot creature, and they decided it was time to split. So, what do you say about that?
Well, when I first started doing this podcast, I had Crystal Panic on, and she is the head of the BFRO in New Hampshire, and she saw a Bigfoot when she was like a kid in the 70s, and when she spoke to me about it, it piqued my interest. So almost every interview I've done ever since, I've thrown Bigfoot in there, and it's just become this obsession that, hold on a second, maybe this thing is real, and then you start listening to people and you hear their accounts, and it's like shit. Like Les Stroud, for example. I mean, he totally believes in him, and then you come across Dr. Meldrum and all these people. And then you hear, like, there was one spotted like a month ago up by the Quabbin Reservoir in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they're all over the Northeast. How many, I don't know. But it's not like they're not being seen in virtually the four corners of North America. And think about this, Cornell. There are 9.5 million square miles in North America. 9.5 million square miles. In just Maine alone, Maine is the size of New England combined.
It's the size of Ireland, Maine.
And there is only 5% of Maine is populated.
That's right. Yeah, I heard. That's what I heard. 95% is forested.
It's ridiculous. So to think, I live here on Long Island. It's a fairly suburban area. We have woods. I have the ocean, bays, Long Island Sound. And people around here, when you talk to them, they're arrogant. They're New Yorkers. Sometimes you can't tell the women from the men the way they talk.
Right.
They think that they've got it all together.
Right.
And when you talk to them, they cannot wrap their puny little minds around the fact that when you leave this state and start to head out off of Long Island, you're going to find relatively quickly that the majority of what your eyes are looking at any given time is the woods. You come across little enclaves and cities here and there, some more or less populated than others. But all in all, when you travel across this country, I don't care if you go north to southwest, northwest, wherever you go, most of what you're looking at is no man's land. And Bigfoot is living out there. There's no doubt. Go ahead.
The reason why he hasn't been found yet, well, I don't think the government want to find him. I think that they know about him, but he's very smart. He's almost as smart as us, and he knows how to hide. That's it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, well, I don't agree with that. They're almost as smart as us, and you're certainly entitled to your opinion. I think they are an animal, and I think they have a God-given ability, like many other animals, to do certain things and do them well. Certainly, I've said this, if I've said it once, I've said it a dozen times. I believe that anything that was created with a pair of hands was given a little bit more than the average bear, so to speak.
Right.
Because to have hands, you need to have the ability to manipulate those hands in a different way than an animal that's just, say, clawing blindly or scratching at something in hopes of finding a grub or, uncovering something they could sniff or eat. I do think these creatures have greater intelligence than probably any other animal. But as far as being anything near a human, I don't think they even come close to what a human has.
So now, Bill, actually, now that you say that, I mean, they can't start fires. So you're probably, I mean, that's what distinguishes us from, like, other animals, that they can't start a fire. So I don't think a Bigfoot can start a fire. So you're probably right, yeah.
Yeah, no, the other thing is, Cornell, again, you don't know me well, but I am outspoken as a practicing Catholic. And I believe, and I know in my heart, that you and I, whether you believe in God or not, were created in the likeness and image of God.
Yeah.
And God is not a Bigfoot. So,
right.
He doesn't, they don't have a soul. We don't have to go down this road, but I'm just trying to give you a glimpse into where I'm coming from.
Okay.
They don't have a soul. They don't pray. Christ didn't die for them on the cross. They're a creature. They're a creation. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what we're dealing with. Now, others may disagree.
Do you think they're an abomination then?
Say it again?
Do you think they're an abomination then?
Not at all. Not at all. But I do think that there are two things going on here. And if you've listened to some of the interviews I've done, I've mentioned this numerous times. In my own heart and mind, I believe there are two things going on here with the Bigfoot creature. I think we have a flesh and blood creature that's as real as you or I. And then I think we have something peering out of the demonic realm, mimicking and imitating that creation in the same way that we are told scripturally that we should take care because Satan himself can appear as an angel of light. So I think we are being duped in certain circumstances where we hear about these creatures flipping in and out, UFO-related sightings and the like. I think it is two entirely different things altogether. One is a fake or a mimicking, and one is flesh and blood real, leaving prints, bleeding, eating, getting old, like everything else on the planet.
Huh. So you think that there's you think that there are two different types of Bigfoot, basically, is what you're saying? You believe in the demonic realm as well?
Well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I've told many people, and if you want to get some looks and people rolling their eyes, it's the same thing when you talk about Bigfoot. I mean, I've had numerous angelic encounters, which I've spoken about openly and continue to speak out, and you can't believe the reception to that when I speak about that with people.
Especially in New York.
Yeah, and especially with people who are atheistic or claim no belief in the divine.
Well, screw those people.
Well, yeah, listen, I'm here to tell them, you're seriously mistaken, my friend. And when the time comes, you're going to be sorrier than sorrier can be if you hang on to that mentality. So I get the same response, and I'm not comparing the things of God to Bigfoot. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying the two are received in the same light when you talk about them to those who do not believe. It's the same type of thing.
So what was the point where that got you to be passionate about Bigfoot? I mean, what was I know you have not had an encounter yet, but what was the thing that got you really into believing this? Because I have the same thing. I'm like 90% in. I used to be 80%. I'm 90% now.
Well, I'll tell you flat out, Cornell. When I first saw the Patterson-Gimlin film many, many, many years ago, something clicked inside of me. And really, Cornell, straight up with you, I don't give a rat's ass what anybody thinks about that Patterson-Gimlin film. When I saw it, something rang true inside of me. Yeah. And I live my life around that type of warning or guidance within me. I've learned to rely on it and that I can trust it. And to me, it's a God-given gift that's available to everyone, but few people have it, trust it, believe that it came from the divine, and allow it to work in their life. When I first saw that movie, I said to myself, that is legitimate, that is a living, breathing monster, and that thing is walking around up there in the Pacific Northwest. Now, I really didn't pursue anything after that, but I was 100% in belief that that film was legit. It was a living creature. It wasn't faked. I don't care what anyone says about it. To me, it's 100% legitimate, and every time I see it, I think the same thing.
Yeah, they haven't proven that it's a person in a suit.
Listen, Cornell, you know, there's an old joke in America. I was born at night, but not last night. So, in other words, I've got some days and age and wisdom under my belt now that comes from living a life and being involved in a lot of different things through the many years. I can tell on my own, without Cornell or anybody else telling me otherwise, that what I was seeing in that picture was a flesh and blood being. And now, having gone through extensive medical training, a lot of the sciences and whatnot, which I won't even get into now, I can see when I look at that picture, correct muscular activity occurring within the limbs of that creature and its body. Yeah. Attachment to the skin and the fur, to the flesh, which is then moving via the muscle and the skeleton of that creature. Stuff that could not be faked by anybody in a monkey suit. It's just the monkey suit, no matter how good you try to do it on a human, is still going to hang in a certain way. It's not adhered to them like a Spider-Man Lycra suit. Yeah. You know, it's just not going to perform that way, and especially in that day and time. There was no CG. There was nothing. No. So these guys, for whatever reason, were there. They got the footage, and kudos to them for doing so, even though everybody and their brother tries to say they didn't, and this guy said it was a fake, and he said it was a fake when he was dying. I'm not buying any of it.
Well, you've heard interviews with Gimlin, right? He's like a straight up guy. He's a hard ass. He's a tough guy. I mean, he's not a bullshitter. No,
Gimlin's my kind of man.
Yeah.
And if I ever met him, I'd smoke a cigar with him and have a glass of stout.
I'd love to meet him.
But you know, having said that, I don't think this guy is BSing at all.
No.
And to be honest with you, I don't need to hear Bob Gimlin.
Right.
I believed it right from the get-go. His talking about it is just further confirmation for me. But if I never heard from the man in my life, it wouldn't change my mind. And then we go from that to all of these testimonials that we know of, and so many more that we don't know of people who are encountering something out there from every walk of life. And they're saying, this is what I saw, this is where I saw it, this is how it happened, and thank you very much, it's been nice talking to you. What more can be said other than what you've experienced?
Yeah.
Yep, you just take it or leave it. You just take it or leave it. It doesn't change. Listen, Cornell, if I told you a few of my angel stories, you're left with a couple of things that you can do after you hear them. You either say, I believe it, you say, I don't believe it, or you tell me you believe it, and when I walk away, you say, what a sack of crap that guy was. But it doesn't change what happened to me.
Right.
It doesn't change what happened to me, whether you believe me, whether you don't believe me. Listen to this. Excuse me. I just wrote a story in Volume 8, which I'm working on. The fellow was in the Mekong Delta, Vietnam War. He was sent out on a patrol, 101st Airborne, 6-man patrol sent out to encounter the enemy. Now, there's nothing unusual about that. This was going on all the time during the war and other wars. You'd send out recon to try to engage the enemy to find out where they were. And guys got killed doing that all the time. Mm-hmm. And they were out there, totally quiet, full camo, a couple of days out into the jungle, no conversation, generally only hand signals being used, and only the slightest whisper if you were right next to somebody at certain points in time. Other than that, it was 100% stealth 100% of the time. They were sitting in a very small clearing in the jungle. And when I say clearing, I'm just talking a space that had other low brush in it, but in the jungle, that would be considered a clearing. They heard a rustling. Everybody got to the position with the guns, and out from the bushes comes a freaking Bigfoot. They looked at each other. They looked at it. It took a couple of quick steps towards them, and they unloaded into this creature, knocking him down and killing him dead. They didn't walk over to it to examine it. They didn't do anything. They knew their position was given up, and they hightailed it out of there.
Shit.
That was Vietnam. That was Vietnam, my friend. That wasn't North America. That was the jungles of Vietnam. So, what are you to say? We did the podcast the other day. We were unfolding a little story about the Yowie in Australia in response to a listener question. And here we go. The Yowie, the Australian Bigfoot. My brother has been in Australia many, many times. He's got some very good customers down there. And he told me from experience, he said, Bill, the majority of the Australian population lives on the coast. There's a number of cities, some are more populated than others, I guess like Sydney or Melbourne. But he said, other than that, when you go inland, there ain't nothing. There are some, Aboriginal people there. I forget what they call them. But, man, you are in no man's land. And just think for a minute, after we spoke about 9.5 million square miles in North America, just think what the possibility is of something unusual roaming around over there. And you could just pick anywhere on the planet, my friend. You could go to Asia. You can go to Russia. Take your pick. I mean, who's to say what is out there? And who is science to dictate to us what we should believe when people say they've encountered thus and so?
Well, science doesn't have any government grants to go out there in a. You would need like even where I live around Quabbin Reservoir, you would need 1,000 soldiers to go through there and comb that whole area just to find evidence of Bigfoot. They can't do it. It's a monumental task.
Yeah, and first of all, the way these things move.
Right.
I mean, if they hear you coming and they don't want to be near you, boom, 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 they're gone frickin'. They're probably running 20 feet to every step you can take.
Yeah.
I mean, they're out of Dodge so fast that you don't stand a chance. I mean, I have stories in my books of people sighting Bigfoot running down other animals. I'm talking 4-legged animals.
Yeah.
And the deer around my house over here, when they get spooked and you see them start jumping and running, they can cover a couple of 100 feet in seconds. I mean, it's just like boing, 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 and they're gone. Think of something being able to keep pace with that and running it down. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. What can run that fast? Bigfoot. Bigfoot can run that fast.
Yeah.
So, and they are cunning because we have accounts of people finding blinds, what they're calling hunting blinds. I have an account of a guy who kept going into this same area. He's probably still doing it today. And he actually befriended a couple. He ran across them at a barbecue in a park and invited them through conversation to check out some of the stuff he was seeing. And he had a place where there was what he called a choke point in a small canyon-type area. And from a high vantage point, he had witnessed a couple of Bigfoot at one end and one moving them in from the other end, like waiting till they came in and then coming from behind them to get them to move. And when they got through the other end, the two got the jump on him, breaking the legs and twisting the neck to kill the creature. So, this thing, when we speak of Bigfoot, I say it all the time, we speak of repetition. Because the same things are occurring over and over and over again. The descriptions, the fur colors, the eyes, the shape of the head, the musculature, the size of the feet, what they're caught doing, where they're caught doing it, blah, 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 blah. It's over and over and over again. So you start to develop a profile like a hunter would of what a bear does. How do I track a Wolverine? You could pick anything. And I mean, of course, the Native Americans were expert trackers many years ago. They could track things with a bow. They could track other men on horseback. Whatever it may be. There are people out there that are pretty damn good at tracking things, and you're not going to find any of them out here in Suffolk County, Long Island. I can tell you that right now.
So, what is it then? If it's, you see, that's why I think it's almost smart as a human, because it can hide. But you're saying it's just a very cunning, flesh and blood animal. That's your thoughts on it.
Well, look at something just like a cougar. If you see a cougar, you're going to see him crawling around on the side of a bluff, maybe above you on a cliff. If you've arrived in an area quietly and it hasn't spied you out. But if it's in the woods near you, you're not going to know that thing is there at all until it either gets to jump on you or you just walk by it. There is no way you're going to see that thing unless you have eyes like an eagle and you're looking and looking and looking and happen to see its face between some leaves on a bush and have enough within you to recognize,
right?
Wow, that's a freaking cougar.
Another question I have is, why haven't they been caught on trail cams? That's why I think they're more intelligent than we think they are.
Yeah, well, why haven't they? I have a guy that caught numerous pictures of them robbing his deer feeder.
Really?
Yeah, so, and then here you go again. Well, where are the pictures? Well, it's not up to me, Cornell, to make the pictures public. And
right.
From what I hear and understand, most people really don't want anything to do with it, to be honest with you.
That's true.
We were talking about this on my broadcast the other day. My brother was talking about a story that was on public media, and we were reading it and expounding on it a little bit. But the young man gave his first name and not his last. So we joked about it. My brother made a joke about it, that through social media he actually found out his name, and then he said, "I'm just kidding," because he didn't. And you see, people just don't want to be near it. They don't want to be associated. There's a stigma, and there's stigmas about a lot of things in life. There's a stigma about your neighbor seeing you go into some perverted lingerie shop. So instead you go sneaking in there at night to do whatever you're doing. There's stigmas about all kinds of things in life, and Bigfoot is just one of them. It's not anything new that an astute businessman doesn't want to be seen going into some dive bar to get drunk. It's just the way it is. You could pick any number of topics, but there's people out there that are trying to maintain an image, be it true or false, amongst their friends or constituents, and that image can be shattered when you start blathering about Bigfoot. And see, I'm a horse of a different color. I don't care. I mean, I talk and confront people about all kinds of issues. I really don't care what people think. And that's just who I am. Now, whether I'm a rare breed or not makes no difference to me. It's just who I am. So I'm not concerned about what you think.
How many encounters do you have in each book?
Say it again?
How many encounters do you have in each book?
Cornell, I can honestly tell you I don't even know. I don't even know. I've never sat down and counted them, and I keep writing, and I have more data here on my desk as I'm talking to you.
Yeah, it just keeps coming in.
So, but I also, since I've been doing this podcast, I've had a couple of people contact me. And I have my own feelings about individuals when I talk about them, and I rely on that also. I had one guy in the Forestry Service who struck me as completely honest. And when first of all, Cornell, when I say that you don't know me, they don't know me either. You have no idea what my knowledge base is. I could have the mind of a freaking snail, and I could have a mind of Albert Einstein, and you don't know which one I have. So when I'm interviewing somebody about what they saw and what they've done, I'm subtly grilling these people with things that if you're in this business, you should know. And I found one guy to be extremely credible, and he was actually teaching me some things. And then I found this other guy who to me was just a fable teller. And something rang in my spirit when I was talking to this man that he's trying to discredit you by seeing if you'll bite on all of what he's telling you. So I came back knowing this kind of in my soul, and I said to him, how about this? Why don't you write me up in somewhat of an essay form everything that we've just spoken about, because we've talked about a lot of things. And then I said to him, I'd also like you to send me the pictures that you have, and I would like to talk to your friend if he's available, who he also said had an encounter. I never heard back from him. And then I reached out to him again after a couple of weeks, having not heard from him, and I didn't get so much as a hello.
Oh, boy.
So I said to myself, job well done.
Yeah.
Because this was obviously a load of hokum, and who knows who this guy was. He could have been some imbecile out there figuring he's going to upstage WJ. I'm going to show this Yankee New Yorker what he's all about. And I don't have any place in my life, Cornell, for people like that.
Yeah.
I like people of all races. I like people from every corner of this United States and across the pond and everywhere else. I'm not looking at anybody from a bigoted standpoint or thinking to myself, how can I get this guy to take a long walk off a short pier and get rid of him? But I know there are other people out there who listen to me and say, what a load of bullshit this guy is, what a loudmouth New Yorker this guy is, and everything else you could think of. I know those people are out there. I meet them on a day-to-day basis. And I don't care about them. I don't care what they think. And believe me when I tell you, I'm a little bit smarter than the average bear. I'm not bragging on anything. You know, somebody's got to be smart, somebody's got to be dumb. And I'm definitely not dumb. So, you know, remember the old detective show? I forget what the guy's name was. Oh, Columbo.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
Yeah, Columbo used to come off like, you know, and by the way...
one more thing.
Right, just one more thing. You know, there was always a method to his madness.
Yeah.
And, of course, it's a TV show. But what I'm getting at is the same kind of thing. Don't ever underestimate your opponent. I had some martial arts training. It's neither here nor there. I have always said, don't get in a fight because anybody can get lucky. The proof in the pudding was recently when some Chinese national kung fu champion put up the challenge to some street fighter or whoever this guy was. This guy ripped him a new butthole in about 5 seconds flat, and he was laying on the floor being attended to. So, here you go. My friend Joey used to say, and I'll never forget it as long as I live, if you don't want to get framed, stay out of the picture. There's no need to engage people who are troublesome. Just walk away and let them continue their rant.
Disengage.
Disengage.
Not engage, yeah.
And that's it. It takes a bigger man to turn and walk away than it does to engage some volatile imbecile, no matter what the subject matter is.
Okay, so did you have any examples from your book that you could display upon the listeners to examples of like confrontations with Bigfoot? Yeah,
well, I have a couple of things I prepared for you here today. One again gives some historical significance, which is always nice because these things have been around for a lot longer than anybody's talking about. And in fact, let me digress for a minute. One of the fellows I interviewed, having just said to you that I'm pretty crafty about exacting information from people when I'm talking to them, he was an Native American. He was in the forestry department. I should say he is in the forestry department. And he had 2 encounters himself. And after I realized, I was on the phone with this guy for probably close to 2 hours. And it really broke into quite a rewarding conversation, I think, for the 2 of us. And I'm not bragging in any way. I mean, we were deeply enjoying the conversation. Let's just say that. And if he lived by me, he could easily be a friend of mine, just based on that conversation alone. Because I don't suffer fools lightly, and I don't like, I don't like stupid people. I'm sorry to say that, but I just have no stomach for stupidity. Right. He was in the forestry department, and I asked him as a Native American, well into the conversation, I said to him, are and were there legitimate totems going back in your tribal history that depicted the hairy man on them? I told him that I've never seen one, but I've heard a report of the hairy man being placed in a totem with the salmon, the bear, the eagle, the elk, in other words, being placed in a totem that's showing respect or reverence, whatever the totem does, for creatures in the animal kingdom, and then suddenly you have this hairy man heading there. Now, there's no gorillas in North America. There's no gorillas been walking around while the Native Americans, as far as I know, have been around. And he said to me, yes. So there you go. Why would these people suddenly place the head of something bogus, mix it in with 5 or 6 other creatures that are evidently real? What would be the purpose behind that?
Well, that's what Les Stroud said too. He said that the Sasquatch was just up there with the bear and the eagle, and up in the Canadian tribes, they just thought of him as another creature. Exactly,
and this is my point. They themselves were not considering this thing a fellow human being. It was another creature in the forest, like the eagle, like the elk, like the salmon, like whatever else they carved into the totem.
Yeah.
And I'm no expert on Indians or Indian folklore or anything like that, but it just always struck me as rather strange that just given that one circumstance, why would that be? And I had an encounter in one of the books. As a matter of fact, it was the same encounter that I just spoke about, where this guy saw the choke point, where they were driving a deer in where they could get the jump on it. In his house, the couple first went to his house because he told them, I have some things at my house that I'd like to show you. And they decided, after giving it some thought, they were going to go. They went, and this guy's house was filled with all kinds of cool things from in the woods. He had furniture made of trees, table lamps that were carved and finished and wired out of exotic-looking branches from different trees. He had antler racks on the wall, all kinds of stuff that you would expect to see in like a real woodsman hunter's house. And over in one wall, or on one wall, here he's got the photograph of Bigfoot. And he's talking about them to them. And then he tells them to sit down, goes in another room, and brings out a milk crate with his plaster cast from Bigfoot footprints wrapped up inside of it. So here you go again. Why, and this is what the wife said to the husband, why does this guy who has all of this stuff in his home relative to real nature suddenly have in this section of the room something that is pure baloney in the form of fake pictures and fake footprints wrapped up in a milk crate? What does one have to do with the other? The answer is it has nothing to do with it. They were all real. And that was what the wife had said. So, now, when we go back historically, I'm going to tell you an account here that's going to blow your mind. And this account was told to me by a fellow named Brian Hoffa, who was actually a resident of Queens, New York, right here going in towards Manhattan on Long Island. And this is what Brian had to say. The story of which I am about to speak was actually handed down to me from my father, having been told to him by my grandfather many years before. My grandfather had passed in 1971, and his wife, my grandmother, had died several years earlier in 1968. At the time of his passing, I was 6 years old. To be truthful, I didn't know him very well, he being a very quiet man, but I loved him just the same. During the process of cleaning out Grandpa's house, many things were taken, including an old photograph which was framed and had been hanging on their home's wall. I had seen this photo many times before, but only now was I to learn the history behind it. Many weeks later, this picture was now hanging in our living room, and I asked my dad if Grandpa was one of the men in the picture. He told me, no, Grandpa was the guy who took the picture of the other men and the camp. I suppose a brief history lesson is in order as I begin to relay this story to you and your readers about how it is that my grandpa and these men came to be where they were when this picture was taken. If I am a little bit off, please forgive me, for I am by no means a historian. In 1916, what is now known as the National Park Service was formed under the presidency of Woodrow Wilson. At its inception, it was formed to protect and to preserve vast areas of wilderness and the like, for the good of the nation and its peoples. There were many great men involved in both overseeing and contributing to this system through the years. John Muir, Theodore Roosevelt, Gifford Pinchot, and Stephen T. Mayer, to name a few. In 1903, during a coast-to-coast trip, Roosevelt came to visit Muir, who was camping in Yosemite. And after having spent the night and awakening to 5 inches of freshly fallen snow, a spark seemed to have ignited within Roosevelt's heart. In 1906, the Antiquities Act was passed through Congress, which gave sitting presidents the power to create national monuments from then public lands. Roosevelt acted quickly with his newfound power, and the first monument to be created was Devil's Tower in Wyoming, with many others soon to follow. It was during the 30s and 40s, amidst the Great Depression and following the war, that the people were clamoring to get into the parks. But how to get to them and what to do when you got there was the dilemma. Now it was in the hands of President Roosevelt to devise a plan, and so the Civilian Conservation Corps was formed. In 1935, the Corps had 118 camps located around the country. It was employing tens of thousands of men with work building roads, bridges, and needed infrastructure for the parks to be seen and enjoyed. My grandfather was part of the Corps, and this picture was a snapshot of one such camp. The photo shows a grouping of 7 large military-style tents, of which I am sure there were many more, with what appears to be portable, folding wooden tables set up, and some men splitting firewood in the foreground. My dad said that the men were heavily armed, according to his father, because there were many wild animals to contend with, including grizzlies, which were regularly coming into the camp. Grandpa had also told him that the men regularly shot and butchered animals for food, and they also fished when near water. Grandpa had told him of many encounters which the crew had during the course of their construction with what he described as being giant, hairy men. He had told my dad that on many days and nights the hairy men had entered their camp, stealing food and in some cases doing considerable damage, their calling card being enormous footprints left behind in the camp, which were particularly visible after it had rained. I should also mention that the camp was in the Shenandoah Valley near Luray, Virginia, and that the picture was taken in 1935. According to Grandpa, early in the morning in August of 36, the camp had erupted with screams, shouts, and gunfire. After the melee had subsided, it became known to all that one of the men, while sleeping in a tent with 7 others, had been grabbed by his ankle and pulled from his cot by one of the hairy men. Upon the man shouting, the others awoke, throwing hand axes at the beast. Grabbing their rifles and shotguns, they gave chase across the grounds. He said that many shots were fired, but the beast was not killed. From that day forward, sentries were set in place throughout the camp, both day and night, to fend off the invading hairy men. He had told my father that the monsters, as he called them, were of enormous stature and strength. The men, during the course of their work, had both seen and heard them felling trees with their bare hands and dragging them through the timber. What do you think of that?
What year was that again?
1936.
This thing goes way back. That's the thing about it. It's not like it's not like since the Paddy film. It's like this thing goes way back until or from the white man got here, isn't it? I mean, it's
great. You know something? You know, my relatives and my family going back came off the boat, came into New York through Ellis Island. Were in the city when there were no real skyscrapers. They were in the city when the Empire State Building was built. They were in the city when World War I broke out. my grandpa actually shot down Richthofen in France. He was in a ground anti-aircraft machine gun battalion, and the story my father told me was his grandfather had said that Richthofen came over a field where they were set up. And my father couldn't remember if he thought Richthofen was wounded or his Fokker triplane was damaged, but he came over low and slow, and they blew him out of the sky.
Nice.
But at that time, I'm making a point here about this 1936 incident. At that point in time, one of the richest communities on Long Island right now, my father said, was considered the Boondocks. Nobody even wanted to buy a piece of property there. And now I live 50 miles away from where that is, and the property where I am is ridiculous according to the national average.
Right.
In fact, in my backyard was where Tesla had his Ravencliff laboratory, and that big antenna that you see in the old Tesla pictures with the building underneath.
Yeah.
The only thing left is the concrete building, and it has a cyclone fence, a chain link fence around it now, so nobody can get in there. The tower was gone long ago. But if you look at all those old pictures, Tesla had built it out here because he didn't want to be bothered, and there was nobody out here to bother him.
Wow.
So that's where that's where I live now. So the point I'm getting at is in 1936, the United States wasn't a fraction of what it is today as far as any kind of population density, roads, infrastructure. These guys were trying to get people to come into the parks. And this corps of engineers, or whatever they called themselves, was set in place to give men work and to also begin to pave the way for Americans and visitors to our country to be able to go into a park, to drive your car, to have restroom facilities, perhaps barbecue pits, whatever, that people could gain access to these beautiful places. And that's what these guys were set up to do. So they were out there. They were out there in places where people were not, which is exactly what I say about people who are sighting Bigfoot today. By far, most of the people encountering this creature are doing things and going in places that your average Joe and Jane just doesn't do or go. They are a small percentage of society, and they're doing things that your average guy would rather stay home eating a bag of potato chips and drinking a beer than going out and doing something strenuous like they are, hiking, photographing, camping out, taking float planes into lakes in Canada. And by far, these are the people that are encountering these creatures.
Okay, so another question I wanted to ask you. So you think that these creatures are basically, I know they're very close because I know they're like, we've got Leominster State Forest right beside us, and apparently there's been sightings there. But you think that these creatures are dangerous?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And the simplest of examples is, let's just say we look at the common dog. And then if you cross over saying the dog is related to a coyote or a wolf. But let's just look at the common dog that we know as a house pet. Many dogs, no matter who owns them, are just out and out friendly. They're friendly when you first see them. They're friendly from the day they're given birth and grow up. They lick people. They don't care what stranger comes into your house. They'll let a burglar break in if they pet them. Then we have other dogs who, if you come into the yard, no matter who you are, no matter if you're the mother of the person living there, they are going to bite you. They are going to growl, they are going to snarl, and they are going to bite your ass. My friend Al had a Saint Bernard, I forget his name. This freaking dog would ambush people coming into the yard just to nail them. It was like a hobby. So if we look at Bigfoot as an animal, which I do, why is there a line drawn between how one can behave and how another one can behave? Why is there no thought given to the fact that one can be more docile and one can be looking to rip you a new butthole as soon as it sees you? I don't understand the logic behind this line of thinking, which I've heard many times.
But I think that caution is the best way to approach it. I think that you should just approach all of them as you would a rabid dog. I'm afraid of them.
Yeah, well, listen, I have deer in my property. Some deer will come over to you and take a carrot out of your hand. Another one will allow you to get close. Then he puts his rack down and charges you. How do you know which one is going to do what?
Yeah.
What triggered one to act in one way and not the other? We don't know. And that is why at the end of my podcast I say tongue-in-cheek, always carry more gun than you think you're going to need.
Yeah, that's true.
That's my opinion. I'm not going out looking for these beasts unless I'm armed to the teeth.
Yeah.
I'm ready for a freaking firefight, because if my firefight doesn't work, I'm dead.
Well, even then, Bill, if you are armed to the teeth, you've got a 12-gauge shotgun. I mean, if one comes up behind you, you're not going to hear it. It's going to take you down quicker than you can get a shot off.
Exactly. So, even under the best circumstances, you'd have a fighting chance. But under the worst circumstances, you're done before you even mount the rifle.
Yeah. I think that's why I was saying about intelligence earlier, because I think that, yeah, they might not be as smart as a human, but they know what a gun is, and they know how we move. They've been observing us for hundreds of years, and they know that if they come out of the tree line behind us and they're fast, they can just take us down in seconds.
Oh, there's no problem. There's no problem, because look at a mountain lion. That thing can just get a jump on a mountain bicycle guy before he knows what hit him. And this happens. We don't hear about it on the news. They don't make it public. But people get taken down on trails by lions. My brother was in Malaysia visiting a customer once. They took him out on an exotic golf course that was carved out of the jungle. And the people that were with him told him that under no circumstances are you to look for a lost ball around here. Now, how's that for a hello? In other words, if your ball goes off the course around here, don't bother. We're going to throw another one down in the grass.
Oh, in golf, because I've got taggers.
They got stuff in there you don't want to put your hand in there. You don't want to go near it.
Yeah, you got snakes and everything in there.
All kinds of crap. I mean, people are stupid. You know, you're just going to go in there. You think you're going to meet something that wants to come out and shake your hand? I mean, it's just freaking ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, how about just walking into a pen where there are bulls, both male and female steer, or whatever you call them? I'm not going in there. That freaking thing has horns and it weighs freaking 2,000 pounds. What are you going to do if that thing bolts and comes after you? You're not going to do anything. You'll be lucky to get out. I mean,
ever since listening to Sasquatch Chronicles, I've been like I'm not going to just go into the woods into the deep woods without being armed. That's really taught me something, that I do believe in Bigfoot, and I do think he's out there, and I think that I'm not going to go with my kid looking for him. Let's put it that way. You know, he's not like the Bigfoot and Hendersons. I think he's going to, you know, disappear us.
Yeah, well, you know, Cornell, I go to the gym quite frequently. I lift hundreds of pounds. A Bigfoot could snap me in half like a twig.
Yeah.
No match. No match whatsoever. It wouldn't even be a contest. He could rip my head off and turn me inside out and hang me in a tree, and there wouldn't be anything I could do about it right from the get-go. A punch in the face, a leg sweep, an arm bar, a half Nelson. What do you think you're going to do to that thing?
Was it your story that talked about the bone pile?
Yes.
And they found the hunter with his face totally crushed in.
Yes.
Was that your podcast?
Yes, I have two bone pile stories, and that one. On that one, the testimony came from a man who was an orthopedic surgeon.
Right, that's right. I remember that one.
Right,
a great one.
He was on the hunt in the Kootenai, up in the Pacific Northwest, where he found himself near Mount Oki. And he had realized, going through the woods as an experienced hunter, that the feeling had suddenly overwhelmed him that there was no activity, and everything had become very silent. And he said it happened so gradually that it took him like a mile to realize what he was now thinking was true. And so he said he felt like a chill come over his body, and that in his own educated mind, he suddenly was thinking that he was in imminent danger and that he might lose his life. Now, what kind of thing is that to say? But he continued to where he came to what he called a break in some bushes. He was following like a major game trail. Then he saw this little like side chute going off through these bushes. When he went through there, he came into an oblong clearing. Not too big. He described it as looking like a well-used campsite. The ground was so tamped down in there. Now, mind you, he's in the middle of a freaking wilderness that people just don't go in. And he finds a place that looked like it was a cleared campsite, and it was so tamped down by whatever had been walking around in there that not even weeds were growing through the dirt. And when he goes in there, the place is strewn with animal bones. All kinds of animal bones. And as he looks over, something catches his eye. Well, what caught his eye was the fabric from a jacket. And when he walked over there, the jacket was still wrapped around the upper torso of the person who was wearing it, who was now nothing but a skeleton, missing its legs, and its face was caved in to the midway point. He said it looked like somebody drove a 7-inch wide steel bar into this guy's face.
Jesus Christ.
What do you say about that?
I mean,
listen,
I don't know.
Listen, Cornell, I could punch you in the face repeatedly for a half an hour till my hand broke, and I am not going to drive the front of your face into the middle of your skull.
Well, what's a skeptic going to say? He's either going to say that this guy doesn't exist, or you're lying,
Again, Cornell, I don't care what the skeptic says. I do not care. I am so sick of addressing the people who think everything is jive that I don't waste my time on them. Move on.
I hear you.
Move on.
Yeah, we can't talk to them because they have no imagination for a start, and they are ignorant, and they think that they know everything. Yeah, I hear you. I hear what you're saying.
You know, and let's go back to the angel again, Cornell. What does science have to do with the divine? Nothing. what some physicist has to say about my angel encounters have to do with them actually happening? Nothing. And what do I care about what they say? Absolutely nothing. The answer is the same across the board. If you don't believe me, I don't care if you don't believe me, and move on. Thank you very much.
Well, when I spoke to John Hillsmeyer a few episodes ago, he talked about being like a total Bigfoot skeptic until he saw a footprint way up north in Maine. And when he saw that footprint, he just knew that it was in a place where you wouldn't even, like, you know, notice it, but he just noticed it perchance. And he saw that footprint, and it was like 16 foot or 16 inches plus long.
Right.
And there was reportings of Bigfoot sightings on the property.
Right.
And when he saw that, his whole life changed. He was like, "There's no way anybody came out here and faked this. It was just so real." And he's like, I want to go up there with him. And he's like, "I'm not going up there without a shotgun."
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about it.
Scared the shit out of him.
Yeah, not me, man. Listen, man. I don't want nothing to do with it. I'm not badass enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not big enough to challenge one of these creatures.
None of us are.
You know, and I think people that go hunting grizzlies are out of their minds.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah.
And so, you know, Bigfoot, you're beyond out of your mind. You are insane going to look for them and trying to engage them. Now, some guys do it. Hey, God bless them. I hope you survive and nothing bad happens to you. But if you're asking me, no way, Jose.
Well, I would love to see one from a set of binoculars, just so that I would have proof. But that's about it.
Yeah, well,
or meeting that.
And of course, somebody else would say, "Well, you saw him at 200 yards. What if it was a man in a suit?" Yeah. And what if you were freaking Daffy Duck, my friend? I mean, it's not a man in a suit. I mean, I know what a man in a suit looked like, and I know what an animal taking huge strides, swinging arms that are 6 feet long back and forth like a pendulum on a grandfather clock. And you're telling me I can't tell the difference between that and a human being?
Yeah, it's silly. Plus, Bill, I think if a man in a suit running around the woods in North America is very irresponsible because he's going to get shot.
Yeah, well,
you know,
if it's me, I'm going to plug you. So look out, I'm coming for you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Bill, I'm going to have to wrap it up here, and I'm going to have to tend to my children. And man, it was great to have you on.
It's fantastic, you know. And if you want to give a shout down the road, give me a holler, and we'll beat the bushes again.
I want to talk about the angel and the Christian stuff. I would like to talk about that.
Well, that's no problem. I mean, I could talk to you for a month about that. But listen, I'd like to encourage people to go to our podcast, you know, Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters. We're having a good time with that, and certainly encourage anybody to go to our website, BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com, and help us out by purchasing a book or an ebook. And by the way, Cornwell, I just downloaded this afternoon my first ebook, my first audio book.
Oh, nice.
I was told by ACX, which is the division of Amazon that does Audible, and we downloaded it this afternoon while I was recording another volume. So I'm hot on the trail of recording all the books as I go along now. And I was told 10 to 14 days to hear back from them.
So Volume 1 will be available in a couple of weeks?
Well, I don't know yet. It's 10 to 14 days just to hear back from them after I downloaded. Then if there's anything wrong with what we did, we think we did everything right. I mean, I used a professional sound engineer. I have the same lady who designs my books and assembles them for me, went on their site and put the cover art together according to what they were asking for. So I don't foresee any problems. But the first book that I did was volume 6, and I'm now working on 5. I don't know why.
You're going backwards.
Yeah, who knows? I have no idea. I just grabbed 6 that day and went to the studio. But at any rate, I will be announcing it on the podcast when it is live and available. And I know you were interested in that. And a lot of other people are interested in this audio book now, too, which I never even thought about.
Well, you should go on the Joe Rogan show, Bill, because he's very into Bigfoot and he wants to be convinced, but he's not convinced. And he's always said that he really wants to believe in Bigfoot because it fascinates him. You should go on, you should contact Joe Rogan, seriously.
And who is Joe Rogan?
Joe Rogan's the sun. If you think of podcasting as a solar system, Joe Rogan is the sun, and we are all like planets, like just going around him as someone. Russell Brand. Joe Rogan is one of the biggest. He's one of the guys that made all of this happen, and he has every type of person on his show. Graham Hancock. He has Bill Dunning. I mean, the list. He had what do you call that guy that just made the Tesla cars? Shit.
Well, don't worry about it. I mean, I get where you're coming from.
Google him.
Uh-huh.
He's a big name in He's the biggest podcaster in this generation.
Well, you see, here's the thing. I don't mind doing what I'm doing at all, and I'm passionate about it. But I like to speak to people of like mind about what I'm doing. I don't like to get involved with people who really don't believe in the creature, or who are. I'm not looking to get into a 60-minute debate with somebody, because I've already been down that road once with this joker from up in Canada. And I said to myself, just like I said to you before, move on. Move on. Don't bother me. You know, if you're of a different mindset than I am, good. You know, go somewhere else to shop. Don't come knocking on my door, because I really have no stomach for these individuals. You know what I mean? And just like in normal life, Cornwell, you could walk away and say, hey, "Listen, I met that guy. I'm never going to meet him again." You know, it's like being invited to someone's house, and after you spend the night there, you're like, "Holy God, I don't know how I made it."
well, Bill, thank you very much for coming on the show. And let's talk again soon. And I'm going to have this up probably tomorrow night, if my wife lets me.
Well, tell her if she won't let you, I'm going to sick Bigfoot on her.
Hey, Bill, thank you very much.
Cornell, have a good night, bro.
All right, see you, man.